welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. We are swinging into my 10 most anticipated campaigns for 2022. Now, for the record, this will skew earlier in the year, and of course around things that I'm familiar with, because Wave 3 and Wave 4 just might not have been announced yet. Along with that, there are a few IP games that I am insanely excited to be bringing coverage of that I'm not allowed to talk about yet. So you won't find them here on this list. That being said, these 10 games are games that I am really hoping to be able to bring coverage to. I will be, directly sending this video to the publishers saying, if you have a prototype, if you have an opportunity for me to playtest, show off, review, and bring coverage to the audience, I hope I can around all 10 of these titles. I fully intend to be adding each one to my collection, and I cannot wait to check them out more. So make sure you subscribe if you're excited about any of these games, because more content will be on the way. And with that, let's start swinging through. I do have these ranked 1 through 10 with a honorable mention 0 at the very end, one that just didn't fit nicely into the format. And this is Quackalope, so we always have to twist the rules once or twice in varied directions. Let's start with number 10. Number 10 for me is going to be Final Girl Season 2. Now, why is Final Girl at the top of this list? Well, it's because I already have all of the content from Season 1 already, and I'm super excited to be adding more maps, more Final Girls, more villains to play. But for now, and over the course of the next year, I'm going to have plenty of content to dive into that I'm not begging for it to already show up. I'm going to be able to play through everything that I have currently and be super excited when the next wave comes in to add a little bit more variability. Now, Final Girl is going to be a solo-style game. It's going to be a solo puzzle where you're doing your very best to play a series of cards and manage your deck of cards, your hand of cards, as you're playing the final girl going up in a classic horror movie trope against one of the various villains. You have the Butcher, or the Poltergeist, or the creature from the Black Lagoon. Any of those kind of 80s, 90s horror movie elements, they're going to be exhibited here in the game. If you like solo games, if you like a fantastic solo puzzle, this is going to be playing on that theme and that genre. And it really does a fantastic job at not only giving you mechanics and a system that you're balancing or playing against as you're choosing what cards to play and how to spend your limited resources, but it also gives you a really overwhelmingly thematic story for paying attention to the way that the creatures are moving around, how they do their final blows or final attack hits, how you use your special powers to take them down. It's a challenging game, it's a very fun game, and I'm super excited to see another wave of it coming to Kickstarter early this next year. Now, that is going to be through Van Ryder. Number 9 for me is going to be a game called Ryozen. This is going to be from Tabula Games, and this is a worker placement game. Now, you're not going to find a ton of Euro or worker placement games on this list. I love story and theme and unique traits in games, and while I love a lot of worker placements and a lot of Euros, I oftentimes find until I have them sitting in front of me, it's harder for me to understand or frame them up against some of the ones that are already permanent staples in my collection. But this one is compelling for two very prominent reasons. First off, is it's going to have a spinning action dial in the center of it. The idea of a pirate ship wheel that fell off and you set it down in the center of the board and you start rotating it, changing the way that your workers have interacted with the board over the course of the game from day to morning, or I think it's morning, day, and night cycle. And depending on where you place your workers and what actions you decided to take, by the end of that round, your workers may be getting different results than they were when you initially placed them. I love the idea of this modular spinning board. I think it adds a lot of interest in something that I don't currently have in my collection. Along with that, you have a beautiful animal theme, amazing artwork overlaying this game, and to seal the deal, every single one of your workers have multi-actions or multi-facets. You can either have them cloaked or uncloaked, which means the way that you're interacting with the board, the way that you're utilizing those meeples as you take your actions, have a little bit more variability. This is supposed to be a mid-weight to kind of just beyond light level game, which I suppose is what mid-weight means. Which means it's not going to be competing with some of my heavier zones. It might be something that I get onto the table easy, quickly, paired up with something maybe like viticulture or something like that, that gives me a really good hour and a half sit session where I get a chance to play and dive into a interesting Euro puzzle. I'm really compelled by it. It's probably one of the Euros that I have, well, I mean, it's on this list, so it's one of the Euros that I have higher up on my anticipatory list. Swinging down to number 8 is going to be Gaijin by Awaken Realms Light. This is a game that was supposed to come out in 2021, but they've been developing and playtesting. I should have a box on the way because I was just asked to do some early or late stage playtesting on it. I'm really intrigued by this one. It's a sci-fi post-apocalyptic setting where you're doing your very best to not only sleuth through the city, finding, I think you're searching for answers to crimes of some sort, or doing research to find different clans and different tribes that you're trying to take down. But as you're doing so, as you're installing yourself in the hierarchy of this post-apocalyptic world, you're also sequencing, upgrading your own body modification parts, and working on your own internal code. Because there's a virtual reality world and a real world. The real world is this kind of post-apocalyptic wasteland with sci-fi aesthetic, which is absolutely stunning. And on that board, you're doing your very best to find, activate, and identify all of the opponents that are there on the table. And sometimes this will be a solo, cooperative, or head-to-head match. I think it's a variable game that requires you to do a little bit of all across the course of play. But you'll be diving into this city, and at the same time, you'll also be working on this computer network, the artificial intelligence, sequencing and solving a pattern or a puzzle that unlocks or hurts your other actions. If you spend too much time in the real world, you're going to be easier to hack, easier to take advantage of, and easier to identify. But if you spend all your time in the artificial world, it's going to be harder for you to find, identify, and target your opponents. So, it's got this nice balance. It's been hyped up for a long time, and it's finally going to be coming to Gamefound early, I believe, early to mid this next year. I'm really excited about it. Honestly, I want to sit down and play it, but everything they've been telling about it, they've been treating this game as if it's one of their Big Brother competitors, and this is a Awaken Realms Light game being treated as if it's an Awaken Realms core title, which I'm really compelled by. I'm interested to see what they can do when it comes to this world. Swinging down to number 7 is going to be Skytear Horde. Now, if you're familiar with Skytear, it's going to be, as far as I'm concerned, the best lane battling or MOBA style game on the market. Horde is going to be competing in a little bit of a different genre. You're going to be looking at Keyforge/Hearthstone. Alex said it is the best iteration, or one of the best iterations of the Hearthstone genre that he's played on the table so far. In Skytear Horde, you're going to be sequencing a tower defense style game where you take your deck of cards, your kind of arcane group, and you're playing out these cards in order to solve a puzzle that's marching towards your front gate. Ripping down your defenses, you have to make sure you take out the minions, destroy the bosses, and still have some life in you by the end of the course of the game. I have a prototype here on hand. Shira and Alex just did a gameplay video. We're going to have more coverage coming soon, but I'm really excited to be diving into this game system. They executed so well with the artwork, the miniatures, the production on Skytear that if they're doing something in a genre that I like even more than a MOBA system, which is a tower defense style game, I'm really excited to see everything they have in store for Skytear Hordes. Swinging down to number 6 is going to be a game that's a collaboration of two of my favorite publishers of all time, Van Ryder Games and Lucky Duck. This is going to be called The Dark Quarter. The Dark Quarter is going to be a detective game where you're doing your very best to uncover and release a kidnapped victim from, well, the kidnappers. You have this tense negotiation, and it's all going to be driven in the same app system that built Destinies, built Chronicles of Crime, and I believe built Divinus that just came out. Now, the collaboration is going to be doing something really unique. Van Ryder Games is handling the story, the arc, and the gritty nature of the game, which, based on their detective series, which is the best detective game I've ever played, should be immersive and immense. Van Ryder punches above their weight when it comes to storytelling, and I love that. And Lucky Duck is going to be handling the core systems, the functionality, the app integration, the mechanics of the game system. They're right now making the best app versions of board games that I've ever played. Not app board games, but the integration of the two systems that don't take you away from the actual gameplay experience, but instead give you something that is a hybrid of this video game world and this physical space. I love what these two companies are doing with both of their products, and I'm really excited to see The Dark Quarter. It is rumored to be a 18-plus style game, something that is a little bit darker, grittier, and approaches the story from a very real and earthy sense. Built in classic New Orleans in the 1980s, you're going to be facing off against a whole lot of machinations and villainous plots, right? And I don't know if it's going to be tied to the real world with murder and kidnapping, or if we're going to have some of the ethereal bridging into this space. But whatever they do, I think it's going to be amazing. So that's number 6, The Dark Quarter by Van Ryder and Lucky Duck. Number 5 is going to be an expansion for a game that I think is really ready for this expansion. This is going to be Moonrakers. Moonrakers by Ivy Studios is a semi-cooperative game where you're doing your very best to deck build your ship. You're going to be getting cards that unlock certain special abilities, going on missions, and slowly taking down or gathering resources to close off the game, victory points being the main driving factor. But the crux of Moonrakers is that you have to work together with everyone around the table in order to accomplish some of those missions. Those missions give you benefits, and you're going to be bargaining with them as to who gets what level of rewards when you come home. The biggest issue that I have with Moonrakers is it plays best at a certain player count. It plays best at 4, and at certain moments towards the end of the game, if people aren't sitting around willing to negotiate, you can get into a point where people are just saying, no, I'm not going to help you, because you're close to endgame. The atmosphere of Moonrakers, the gameplay of Moonrakers, the style of deck building and card play is really fantastic. And the expansion that they're bringing in is not only going to add some interesting narrative changes to the story of Moonrakers, along with a full overhaul on the mechanic system, but they're also going to be incentivizing in the base game the idea of cooperative play, giving varied benefits and upgrades if you're going to be part of that cooperative experience. So instead of the table having to instigate and decide when and how they want to help, the game itself will say, if you do help, you're going to be rewarded for doing so. And I think that small change, I think that slight adjustment is going to iterate on that system really well and change the way that you approach it. Now, along with that, like I said, they have plans for a full overhaul of the game system, where you're using the same concept of deck building and growing your ship to go out on these space missions, and changing it so that you're going a bit more into a narrative route. For me, I already really like the card play, I love the puzzle solving, I like the way everything sequences, how you're playing your actions in order to gain more actions and continue cycling your deck, and if you toss in a little bit more narrative for me, we're going to have a good time. Swinging on to number 4 is going to be Rolling Heights from AEG. Now, this is a game that I have a gameplay coming out very, very soon. Rolling Heights is a fantastic iteration on the pressure luck system, coming from John DeClaire, who made Cubitos. Now, I didn't love Cubitos, and I've told everyone that across the board. Here's the thing. I love Rolling Heights. Rolling Heights is going to be the best iteration of Quacks of Quedlinburg or Cubitos combined. You're going to be rolling meeples, trying to get them to stand, lie flat, or be tilted, and those will result in various different upgrades that you get as you're developing your city. Those meeples result in resources, those resources get spent on cities, and you start building out your city district. It has this expansive map with cubes that pile high up to the sky, and it feels amazing to play. You grab yourself a handful of meeples, shake them up, toss them into your box, and really feel like you're trying to press or push your luck. Now, it also has a mechanic that keeps you from really taking a lot of damage, similar to Cubitos, where if you roll over a certain amount, you now have to decide how risky you want to be. But up to that point, you're going to be guaranteed the stuff that you get. We played multiple times. In fact, we played multiple times, not even for coverage, just because the game was fun, and we were upset when we had to send the prototype off. This game is fantastic, and I think a lot of people that love that pressure luck system are really going to love Rolling Heights. Number 3, Tidal Blades 2 from Skybound. Tidal Blades 2 is an interesting twist on not only its story, but also its genre. You see, it's nothing like Tidal Blades 1, where you had a worker placement, dice growing game. You're doing your very best to upgrade and sort of escalate your dice in order to accomplish a series of missions across the board. This is not that. Instead, this is going to be a dungeon crawl. And a dungeon crawl with a really interesting action selection system. You see, you're going to have programming. You're going to be putting your cards into a board in front of you and programming the actions that you're taking over the course of the game. And that system, the way you grow your characters, the narrative that you're diving into, and the way that you decide where to place buffs, debuffs, and other abilities onto your 3x3 grid on your board is really, really fun. We've already played through Chapter 4 of the 6-part prototype that we have on hand. Alex and I are playing through once fully, and then definitely diving back through with a variety of other content creators here on the channel. I'm really excited about Tidal Blades 2. It's one of the cleanest, most accessible dungeon crawlers I've came across in a long time, and it's really easy to set back up and get back to the table. I cannot wait to have the full finished production copy, and along with that, the narrative is fantastic. It's a atmospheric theme that you don't get a lot of the times in your dungeon crawl environments. It's this coastal, sort of Hawaii-esque, reef island livelihood with a ton of creative and vivid characters, a lot of beautiful artwork. I think people who like Tidal Blades, like that genre, and love dungeon crawls are really, really going to love this game. Number 2, the Unsettled expansions from Orange Nebula. Now, Unsettled, I can actually see it sitting right in front of me because we played it just recently. Unsettled is an amazing core system. You're doing your very best to work together to solve a variety of galactic problems. It reminds me of sort of these video games where you pop into different ethereal worlds, kind of like Portal in some ways, with its tropes on humor, its weird, wacky robots that are moving about, and also these puzzles that you're trying to solve. But every time you dive into a puzzle, you're never quite sure what you're faced with, what challenge you're trying to overcome, and the rules, systems, and the way you interact with the puzzle changes from scenario to scenario. And this game comes jam-packed with a whole set of archetypes and scenarios. Now, the cool thing is that after you play one, you dive back into it time and time again, doing your very best to perfect, twist, or just solve and repeat that puzzle. Every one is standalone, and every one has its own sort of innate twist to it that builds a really great replay experience. As far as my group is concerned, you're trying to actually win and not just see and lose. Now, the one thing that I want, though, with Unsettled is, of course, more of those packages, more planets to explore, more weird, twisted ideas, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but if they can play more with the trope that they established in the first game, the pie is a lie if you'd have it, then I'm really excited to see what they can come up with. I think they've been given the permission to sort of take off any bars or any holds and just get weird with it. And weird with Unsettled is exactly what I'm going for. Orange Nebula makes some fantastic games. First and foremost, of course, is going to be Vindication, which is coming out with a full storytelling element here very soon. Super excited to have that arrive. But Unsettled is certainly one of my favorites. I don't know if it beats Vindication for me. I need a few more plays, I think. But my gut says, with enough time, it just might. Interesting. Let's swing down to number 1. Number 1 is going to be Kingdoms Forlorn. This is going to be from the creators of Aeon's Trespass, Into the Unknown Games, or Into the Unknown Publishing. Kingdoms Forlorn is going to be a dark, epic fantasy game where you're doing your very best to journey forth as a noble knight in this twisted realm, moving across various different kingdoms. And every kingdom has its own player board where you're going to be interacting and moving in various different ways. It promises a lot. In the descriptions that I was reading about Kingdoms Forlorn, it basically promised me everything I want in a game. What if what you love in RPG games, what you love in wide open, vast, expansive games was able to be brought down into the board game space? What if you could explore these twisted realms, if your narrative tied with others, if your journey never stopped, if your adventure came to an end when you died, but that opened up other opportunities for you to continue exploring? What if, what if, what if? And Kingdoms Forlorn is here with a bit of a caveat. I don't actually know much about it yet, and there's not a lot about it out there. I know the miniatures are incredible. I know the promise of the game for a RPG, dungeon adventure, a open world board game is super promising. It's something that compels me a lot, and I love the artwork, the minis, and the presentation that they're offering me. But I don't know what the actual gameplay is. They're promising heavy, thinky, tactical mechanics around a dungeon crawl. They're promising immersive storytelling that doesn't stop at really any point, that continues circling and tying. They're promising true cooperative that allows you to work together while still having your own self-contained stories. They're promising a lot. And I don't have Aeon's Trespass yet. I've asked for a prototype. I'm really hoping that I get one in, or just a final copy by the time they start arriving. I want to dive in because it's most directly compared to Kingdom Death and came out when we were first starting this channel, so we weren't in a position to really do any direct coverage of it. I loved Oathsworn, which is another competitor, another version of that Kingdom Death genre that came out a little bit earlier, and I'm excited because I will be getting a full copy of that in order to bring coverage here to the channel. But Aeon's Trespass has been kind of at the peak of my interest level for a long time. And Kingdoms Forlorn may be one, when it comes to theme, genre, and overall promise, that I'm even more interested in. I saw a set of their decks or their action cards that looked so cool, like playing cards with this really, really interesting old-style Knights artwork. I love it. I love everything I've seen so far about this game, which has me insanely excited about it. But I also just don't know. I don't know about what the core systems and mechanics are. I don't know about how you explore these multi-leveled, varied worlds. I mean, it kind of reminds me of Etherfields in a way, where you're diving into these storybook expanses, and each one of these kingdoms gives you a new puzzle to solve, which in Etherfields was a premise that I really, really liked. They're doing a lot of things here that, for me, is super compelling, and it may be one of those games that for me becomes just an insane Grail game, right? Tainted Grail, Kingdom Death, Oathsworn. There's a pile of these massive role-playing adventure games that I adore. But we'll have to wait and see. Right now, it is my most anticipated coming for 2022, because partially all the stuff that I don't know, and partially all the promises that they've made, and then tying that all together, the fact that, from as far as I've heard, they executed on something pretty unique with Aeon's Trespass. And I'm really excited to get that into my hands so that we can give it a comparison. There we are. Now, I did promise you a number 0, and a number 0 is just one of those obvious ones that everyone should be aware of by this point. It's going to be Marvel Zombies. Now, I had a chance to sit down and do 2 gameplays of Marvel Zombies just recently, and we're hopefully going to be doing more coming up shortly. And I have to say, it is, as far as I'm concerned, the best zombicide game on the market so far. It's so cool to see the Marvel IP swelling into this space. Now, they've been releasing a lot of designer diaries, which have more information for those of you that are curious and following along, but what I can tell you about Marvel Zombies right now is that as you're kind of going through the game, the escalation of your different zombie heroes is really, really fun. There's this whole built-in system where you're slowly becoming more ravenous as you play, and at certain points you have to trigger an attack that allows you to consume, or you're not able to use the rest of your actions. It's this slight modifier and debuff, but the cool thing is as you become hungrier, you also become stronger and more powerful. So the game has a really nice ebb and flow as you play, as you go through the story, and it's super challenging. If you want to call back to Black Plague, the style of gameplay, accessible but hard, overwhelming nightmares, it's really cool. And finally, of course, the people that you're facing down against, those are going to be your champions, your heroes. Those are going to be the Marvel Universe. And how neat. I mean, it was insane to take one of my hero zombies and go head-to-head against a regular hero. Yeah, it was terrifying, but such a cool experience to be sitting there and thinking, I get to play as some of my favorite IPs in a game that is a deep, thinky board game, like a subgenre of a subgenre. So there you have it. My top 10 coming out this next year. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think, and what did I overlook? Who else should we be reaching out to do coverage of over the course of the next year? Remember to like and subscribe, leave a comment down below, and remember to do the important thing, get out and play some games. We'll see you next time. Thank you.